Hey guys.
Hello.
Great turnout again. Thank you all for keeping up with this. I know obviously it's like your downtime in between dives and digesting food, but really, really appreciate you all coming day after day to listen to me talk a lot. I know I'm probably boring, but thank you very much. Today is the last of the presentations for the marine biology expedition. We're going to be combining two of the presentations into one. I will try to race through and keep it at a similar sort of time frame, at 25 minutes. But if you get bored of me talking, please just go to sleep or something. It's up to you. I'm going to be talking about two things. First of all, Crown of Thorns, the starfish that we're seeing. I don't want to hear boos. I'm going to convince you otherwise. I'm going to talk a little bit about their ecology, biology, some of their behavioural characteristics, and then basically introduce some research that we have done that is currently in press for publication. So you guys are the first to get a lowdown on what we found. And I'm going to run through that a little bit. There's a few ugly looking graphs, but don't worry too much. I'll try to just keep it nice and simple. After that, I'm going to introduce a little bit of some things that you guys can be doing when you go diving anywhere in the world to help with conservation. So a few different things that you guys can do. So starting off with the Crown of Thorns, a little bit of background on these really, really interesting organisms. They're an invertebrate, a slow-moving invertebrate, belonging to the phylum. So in taxonomy, phylum is the big group belonging to Echinodermata or echinoderms. Echinoderms are starfish or sea stars, sea urchins, sea cucumbers. So all of these come under one phylum, and the Crown of Thorns are an echinoderm. So as juveniles, when they are really small, to the point we can't even see them, they feed on something called CCA, or crustose coralline algae. And this is a really, really important substrate that we find on the reef that is you guys won't even notice it. It's everywhere, but you won't notice it. It's a form of algae, but crustose coralline algae, meaning that it's actually a hard calcifying algae. Similar to the feel of coral, it has a calcium structure and it's on the rock. It's like a purple colour and it's known as the cement of the reef. So this crustose coralline algae binds together all the different substrates on the reef and helps to keep that complex structure. So hard corals will recruit or bind onto this CCA when they're very small. So will sponge, anemones, lots of different organisms will use this. And this is why it's known as the concrete or the cement of the reef. It's so, so crucial. So as juveniles, they feed on this. And as they develop into adults, how we know they are, how we see them quite a lot, they become what is called obligate corallivores. So obligate meaning they only feed on one thing, and corallivore meaning same as carnivore or herbivore, they feed exclusively on coral. And they've got quite a bad name across the world for this, because they have been known to reach outbreak proportions, at which point in some areas have decimated live coral cover. Up to 80% of the reef has been shown to die when these are in excessive numbers. But when I say excessive numbers, it's absolutely nothing like what we're seeing here. This is a really healthy population of Crown of Thorns, by the looks of it, across all of the sites that we've been on. An outbreak, really, when it's having that 80% impact on coral death, is when we're seeing tens of thousands per hectare, so per 1,000 square meters. But Crown of Thorns have a really, really important ecological role. So despite their bad name, they are so important for the reef. And these ecological roles include three main things. By feeding on the coral on the reef, they are removing potentially dominant species of coral and freeing up space for new coral to then inhabit. And in turn, this is actually increasing the biodiversity of coral. They have a feeding behavior known as density-dependent predation, which basically means they are feeding on the coral that is most widely available. They will target what is dominant on the reef environment. And because of this, like I said, they can really influence this biodiversity by removing fast-growing species, often branching forms of coral, and freeing up space for slower-growing corals to recruit. By increasing the biodiversity, they also promote reef resilience. So if we have higher diversity, we also have greater genetic diversity. There is more gene pools in the environment where different coral is recruiting. And because of having a higher gene pool, reef resilience, so they're resilient to stress events such as bleaching, disease, ocean acidification, all these things that we associate with a changing climate and human impacts, they're actually potentially more resilient to these threats. Crown of Thorns are also a prey for a number of reef fish and other invertebrates. So they're really, really important to the food chain on the reef. If we remove them, think of them again like a keystone species, things can come toppling down. But this keystone also goes the other way. If there is a lack of their natural predators, they might explode in population and then have these detrimental impacts that we know about. One of the most interesting things about these guys as well is they have a really complicated life history. So their life cycle, with fish we have larval, post-larval, juvenile and adult as a kind of general law. But with these guys, they have 12 individual life stages that are all very distinct. And these range from being pelagic life stages, so they float in the water column as zooplankton, to benthic phases, as we know the starfish living on the substrate. So at first, we have the gametes, the sperm and the egg cells free-floating in the water column, and then this will develop through various stages into a zooplankton, a pelagic larvae, which will settle, turning into a juvenile sea star and grow, feeding on CCA, that algae, and then growing into an adult. And this graph here is from a paper that was written a while back, but it shows the variety of different species that feed on the Crown of Thorns at various stages in their life. So as this zooplankton, we have butterfly fish, damselfish, also large filter feeders such as whale sharks will be feeding on these. And as they settle as very small organisms, they're then fed on by a range of different invertebrates, crabs, shrimp, other starfish, worms, tritons, huge range of different things, as well as some of the more middle predator fish species, the emperor fish. So we see them changing colour, often picking at the reef. Sometimes they might well be feeding on juvenile Crown of Thorns. Often we can't see these, they're really small and well hidden. And then a range of different fish feed on these juveniles. As an adult, this list becomes shorter, and there are 3 main predators on the reef of a healthy Crown of Thorns. This is the emperor fish, the puffer fish, and the triggerfish. I'm not going to talk about triton conches, as in Hawaii this is the top predator, but we don't get them over here. We don't really have that predator here, so it's more the triggerfish and the pufferfish that are feeding on these adults. So a healthy balance of these fish will keep the population in check. And then also we can just see as injured and dead adults, everything is all to play for, everything comes in and tries to feed on them. And it's really interesting seeing them all scavenging on a dead Crown of Thorns. But yeah, really, really important prey species. So I said about Crown of Thorns outbreaks, and outbreaks, they happen all over the world now. They used to happen every maybe 50 years, but they're now happening as much as every decade to now probably a little bit more. The literature is catching up, but definitely happening more and more and more. And there's a few reasons for this, which I'm going to go into, but we can also try to control these outbreaks to ensure that coral reefs aren't decimated, and controlling this level before they get up to thousands per hectare. So we have active methods, culling, which you can see in this photo. And there's a few different methods. We have removals, which involves literally going with gloves and picking up the crown of thorns, putting them in a bag, taking them to shore, and then usually burying or burning them. There were stories back in the day of people that would actually just chop them up, but what they didn't know is starfish rejuvenate. So it really did not help whatsoever. It, in fact, probably made it worse. The second and more common and contemporary way of controlling the outbreaks now is by an injection of a bile salt. So it's a citric acid-like compound which is injected directly into the starfish and kills it completely. And these are really, really effective now. And in Australia, there's actually whole fleet boats known as the Crown of Thorns project, which dive masters can go and work. And you are going, I think you work like 10 days off, 5 days off, 10 days on, 5 days off, and you're going 4 dives a day just injecting Crown of Thorns. And in this area, it's much needed. They have outbreaks of up to 10,000. It's quite bad. But we also have passive methods of controlling outbreaks. So investment in management, so wastewater management, as I'll come on to in a minute, this is a big issue for outbreaks. Fisheries management, and also reef restoration. So if there has been an outbreak event, we can restore reef environments. But this is where it gets a little bit tricky. The definition of an outbreak of Crown of Thorns is really variable across the world. And what's happened, where they've been made famous from the Great Barrier Reef, all the research over the last 20, 30 years has come from the Great Barrier Reef. So scientists will have done lots of studies over there, looking at the health of the reef, the amount of crown of thorns, the amount they're eating, and they have calculated like a carrying capacity, how much the reef can withstand, and created a definition. And this does vary across Australia. But what's happened across the world is people have just taken this for gospel now. And they have applied these definitions to their environment without doing the research. So we have loads of different definitions. Sometimes more than 10 per hectare is an outbreak. Sometimes over 30, 6 to 20, very ambiguous. And in Thailand, it's generally used green fins, the body of conservation here, or one of. They use over 15 per hectare, which is actually a really, really low number. A lot of sites where I'm from would maybe, well, do constitute, they have double that, but the effects that they are having are not very big. And what this is showing is there needs to be more research locally to account for like the variation in ecology in site to site, so that there is a better understanding of what an outbreak is before you go, okay, there's more than 10 now, we need to go and remove them, and potentially causing an imbalance and removing this keystone species, which is really negative. So is there a golden number? Probably not. We need to do research around the world, individually focused to each place. We can also get outbreaks from a lack of natural predators. So overfishing is one of the biggest things. We have groupers, sweetlips, and emperor fish, which are natural predators, and they're all commercially targeted species. And the removal of those will mean that the larvae are going to survive, and there's going to be a bigger population boom on the reef. 80 known predatory species, so a lot. The final lecture that I'm going to talk about is an introduction to conservation biology. So this is combining biology, ecology, diving, our love for nature, and applying it to how you guys can actually help with the course, apart from just being great divers and enjoying nature. So there's a few different things we can do, and some monitoring techniques you can all do that you probably have all done already, and are really, really easy to do every time. So the first one is photo and video data. You guys have been snapping away, taking videos, taking photos. There's been turtles, and turtles is a great example. Your images can really, really help boost conservation in the region. We have a project here in Thailand called Tau Talay Turtle Project. And this is across all of Thailand, and it's an identification scheme to monitor the individuals that are present in Thai waters, where they turn up, what they're feeding on, if they're still alive. And you can ID a turtle from a photo just like this. Like a fingerprint, the side profile of their face, these black markings are unique to each individual. And this is some photos supplied by a guy who runs the project called Amir, really lovely guy, he's based on the other side of Thailand. And these are some regulars that we get in Koh Tao. I did ask for some images of ones around here, but unfortunately he didn't have any to supply, but it's still a good example. So we have Donatello, which is a regular on the other side of Thailand, and Eva, a hawksbill that was around the island for 10 years, but then subsequently went missing and has not been spotted. So they can use this data to really, really check populations, monitor individuals, and maintain this database for turtles in Thailand. This is also the same for whale sharks. If you get videos or photos of whale sharks, there's a whale shark project by a lovely person called Kirsty, who is again on Koh Tao and actually is like the resort next to me. So yeah, you guys can supply this, and it's really, really helpful data. The next thing I want to mention is this lovely website called Coral Watch. Some of you might have been sort of familiar with it, maybe not. But it's basically set up by the University of Queensland in Australia to try and standardise a way for citizen science to monitor coral health and coral bleaching. So what you can do is you can go on to coralwatch.com and create an account, and you can download or order a free coral chart which comes delivered to your door. And what this is, I actually have one with me, so whoever's diving with me, or I can hand it out if people want to try. But you basically match the coral that you are looking at with the colour code on the chart. And this tells you to the extent of the bleaching in that area. I've given it a go here, and it's brilliant. Really nice. We're not seeing any bleaching at all at the moment. But coral bleaching is something that with the El Nino this year, or starting this year, is expected to be a global event in 2024-2025. And I know that last year there was huge amounts in Florida. So for those going back to the States, this is something that I couldn't recommend more in terms of getting involved with. It doesn't take time at all. You have it in your pocket. If you see some bleaching, you can do that. You record it on a slate or whatever you have, and you can submit this to the data portal. And this goes towards huge amounts of projects across the world. And it's so valuable to understanding bleaching around the world. So please, please, if you're going to do anything, sign up to this. And then just a couple of other examples of things we can do. There is a range of citizen science projects. Maybe in your area you can find out about ones that are happening, but I'm sure there are some. The Crown of Thorns stuff, we can do that just by going on diving. I can do this right now. We can go down, we can count how many we see on the site, and then all we need to do is have an estimate of the dive site. I'm sure Richelieu, somewhere there's a number for how big Richelieu is, and then you can just extrapolate, and you can work out how many there are per hectare. A really easy way. And this is important as well. If you know of the relevant authorities, you can notify, okay, the last month I've done 5 dives and I've seen it, a lot of Crown of Thorns. Potentially there's going to be an outbreak, and this is really important. And there's also things called roving diver surveys. Again, you guys can do this. There's a few different tools. There's a great tool that I recommend downloading, the app called eOceans. And this is someone that we've been doing a bit of work with. And they started off as eShark, but they've now gone into everything. Mantas, ghost fishing gear, sharks, everything you could think of. And what this involves is you going on a dive, you doing your normal dive, and you counting. If you're doing sharks, how many sharks did you see? What species? Estimate of depth and estimate of size. Record that. Same with mantas. And you log this on a site, the oceans, or if there's one in your local area, then you can supply that data. And again, this citizen science data is so important for conservation. It gets larger data pools for everyone to then use in science. And it really expands the whole science. So I hope you guys go away and do your bit if you can. But if not, just enjoy the water, be considerate. These have been fantastic dives, and it's been great presenting to you all. So thank you very much. This is our website for anyone who's interested in Global Reef to learn a little bit more or just see what we're up to. On Instagram, we have an account, and then my socials as well. If you want to, stay in contact with me, happy to give my WhatsApp to people who, might want to just keep in contact or whatever, or have questions in the future, or they see something crazy and they're like, "What's this?" You can have my WhatsApp and ask me. But yeah, really, really appreciate you guys. It's been fantastic.
If you liked this video, click here to see more like it. Please follow us on social media and feel free to like and share.